I think how AI is accelerating code and production of things in our current environment. That's what social media did to kids' problems. It's just all recorded. And I think the smallest of things. We have reports in the Metroplex of 10 and 12-year-olds hanging themselves or committing suicide because they were bullied in one day on social media, because they just know it's there for perpetuity and it's never going to get erased. It's never going to go away unless you know a congressman to get it, scraped off the internet. It's not going to happen. I think number one, I don't give up on kids because I just think there's hope. And I tell our people, man, if it's 1 degree of change, if we have that kid for 45, 90 days, whatever, and we just get 1 degree of change when he's 30, man, that protractor is really wide at the very end of that. So I think it's a lot of optimism, right? Because I see parents can change. I see kids can change. I see just hopeful outcomes. That gets me in trouble sometimes because I'll take kids with 3 heads and a lot of baggage and stuff like that. But 9 times out of 10, I think that's the thing that it focuses me the most, and it keeps me coming back. So there's hope on the front end and there's hope on the back end.
Welcome to the Brainwaves podcast, podcast where we explore the people, programs, and purpose reshaping behavioral health and healthcare innovation. I'm your host, Humberto Bunioto, and today we're diving into the rising tide of anxiety, depression, and behavioral disorders among teens, and more importantly, what we can do about it. Our guest today is Austin Davis, founder and CEO of Clearfork Academy, a residential treatment center for adolescent boys struggling with substance use, anxiety, depression, and co-occurring behavioral issues. Austin brings a unique mix of clinical insight, entrepreneurship, and heartfelt compassion to the work of helping teens heal and families reconnect. From ADHD to addiction, trauma to technology, today's teens are facing more challenges than ever, and Austin's team is on the front lines. We'll talk about what's driving the crisis, what Clearfork's approach is in meeting the moment, and what parents, educators, and providers can do to recognize red flags and offer real support. Austin, welcome to the pod. Let's talk a little bit about your journey, if you don't mind, and what inspired you to found Clearfork Academy and what keeps you motivated in this work.
Yeah. I guess going way back, I really thought I was going to work in the local church as a youth pastor. And so my undergrad's in pastoral ministries and ended up in seminary. So it was kind of a first career. And when I'm sitting talking to a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kid, we're not opening up Romans and looking at the Greek and stuff like that. I'm going, dude, what the crap's wrong with you? Right. And it turns into counseling and it turns into helping skills and really following that journey. And so went back and got a master's in counseling, which led to psych hospitals, case management, all the grinding of early clinicians. And then about in 2010, started working with adults and in the inpatient setting and residential. And so again, kind of doing groups. I was clinical director, then I was COO, then I was eventually running the whole thing. And there's a theme going through that adult treatment facility when a 30-year-old starts talking about his stuff. And I was like, man, when did that happen? Or when did that start? And he was like, oh, when I was 14. And then the guy over here would say, oh, that happened to me when I was 16. And the guy over here would be like, oh, I was 19. And so there's just kind of this theme of adults, in air quotes, talking and living through their 13, 14-year-old self. And so kind of a entrepreneurial seizure, as Michael Gerber calls it, started Clearfork and said, hey, can we have a fork in the road for these men 15, 20 years prior in life, so they don't end up in treatment with wife, kids, family, businesses, trying to figure stuff out. Maybe we can solve that problem early on.
Yeah. What were some of the things that they would tell you that contributed to them, having issues later in life?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of themes, right, are obviously divorce or family disruption, something like that. The family breaks up, death would be included in that. I would say moving. A lot of
Really?
Army type families or families who had job placement movement like sales or growth. You see dad's going to take a job from Florida to Nebraska, that's very different way of living, and kid just doesn't find his place. And so kind of whittle all that back down to, and I think this with our kids too, we always try to answer this question is, who am I? And when there's disruption in life and that question doesn't get answered, we do dumb things, just as humans in general.
It makes me a little bit concerned because my wife and I travel a lot, and we're looking to have kids soon. And we often think about like, oh, let's take them on the road. Let's go to Europe. Let's go to South America. Let's go. And what you're saying is that may not be good long term. Like it could cause
Well,
a little bit of
so
disruption.
so we homeschool. I got 3 kids, 9, 11, and just about to be 13, and we do the same thing. But I think it's how you handle it, right? How you create social structures and norms and engagement that are purposeful, right? So is what I see a lot is when those things happen, right? You're not next to grandma, you're not next to the uncle, you're not next to the teacher or the coach who like you had good relationship with, and so there's a there's a tearing away and then not a replacement of those relationships. And so kids find drugs, they find depression, they find anxiety, and I don't think we're really good at rebuilding communities in general.
And I guess there's some aspect of, I guess, another, to use us as an example, we live in Colorado. We don't really have family around. I'm originally from Brazil. My family now lives in Portugal. My wife's family lives in New England.
Mm,
And when we think about kids, we are constantly having conversations about, does it make sense for us to relocate near where there's more of a structure where they're going to be able to hang out with their cousins and their uncles and their family, and there must be something to that as well, right?
yeah, I think so. I don't have any family in Texas. I grew up here, but kind of estranged from a lot of folks. And my wife's sister, one lives in Denver and one lives in Missouri. So we just build community. I don't think it has to be blood. I mean, I've got a couple of buddies that I would call my brothers.
Mm.
And they liken themselves to uncles to my kids, and so I think it's just about the value of community and relationships that help us all grow. So we just, there's a saying in AA, right? Like, you're only as sick as your secrets, and if there's nobody to share that stuff with, you got to hold on to it yourself, and it becomes hard to live that way.
Yeah, agreed. You're probably seeing, and I'm assuming this, but you're starting to see clients that grew up in sort of the boom of social media, right? Your early 30s. Anytime I talk to a clinician, I'm always interested in how that's shaping their recovery journey and kind of, because it's kind of massive. Like I grew up with dial-up internet, and there's really no social media until I was about, I don't know, 25 or so. So I wasn't really forced to it. And kids from like 20 is when like Instagram blew up and Facebook. That's when people kind of had to live in it, and they have to now. It's kind of like a way of life, and you're sort of ostracized if you're not in social media in a way if you're young. How does social media, how did it shape? Have you seen any differences between like seeing clients 5 years ago, 10 years ago that grew up without social media and what they're going through?
Yeah. I think how AI is accelerating code and production of things in our current environment. That's what social media did to kids' problems. If I don't, it's just all recorded, and I think the smallest of things, we have reports in the Metroplex of 10 and 12-year-olds hanging themselves or committing suicide because they were bullied in one day on social media, because they just know it's there for perpetuity and it's never going to get erased. It's never going to go away unless you know a congressman to get it, scraped off the internet. It's not going to happen. And so I think it's just really added fuel to anxiety, depression, substance use, sex trafficking, all the other things. We kind of grew up in an analog world, and this digital thing, it just accelerates so much faster. And so we see symptoms faster, we see crisis faster, and it's tough for them. It's tough. And that's aside from all the addiction component of the dopaminergic impulses and distraction. And so nobody can focus. Nobody can focus in session. Nobody can focus in homework or activities because they're just distracted.
I find it very interesting that we've developed ways to help people with addiction of all types, but social media itself is not something that is treated or treatable yet. Like there's no treatment
Yeah.
center for social media. And I'm wondering if you think that that's eventually going to be the case, or somebody like admits to be treated for addiction to social media, because you have
Yeah.
treatment for most things, sex addicts, AA, workaholics anonymous, and all these things. But addiction, this is like perhaps one of the most acute addictions out there, because you kind of can't get away from it. Like, it's all around you. It's like, I don't know, food.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I think it kind of, I'm just big on on community and having the family unit. I'm a family therapist, trained in family systems and then addiction. Having the family unit have roles and expectations so that I don't have to deal with it as a professional, right? Like, parents call me and they were like, "How do I get him to stop playing, his video game?" You walk in there and you turn it off. Well, he's going to have a fit. Okay. Well, he's bigger than me. We'll call the uncle to walk down the street. Like, parents feel handcuffed at a lot of times. And I just think we need, somebody used the word hygiene one, like phone hygiene. We need to have some like rules around this that really begin in the family, that begin with parents putting down their phones. I'm the worst business owner, a couple of businesses, my phone's always moving, but when it's dinner time, this thing goes in the little cabinet, and my kids and my wife have my attention for 45 minutes while we eat dinner. We have that thing spaced out, and so I think we have the available resources to do it. And I don't think there's a disease model around it to where we have a billing code for it. I think we have enough education. We've seen the Netflix videos. It's just personal responsibility. And we have to fight against the $1 trillion companies that try to program us to click the button every single
Yeah,
day.
it's true. I think there's probably an urge to kind of over pathologize the addiction, but the parents themselves, like, you just use your phone goes in a cubby somewhere, and now I'm spending time with my family. If the parents that are trying to enforce the no social media, no iPad, no television, but they're walking around texting around their kids and not really paying attention to the surroundings, you can't really be the enforcer if you're the one that's.
Yeah. Well, I was driving to work this morning, and this car was merging onto me, and I had to brake and get out of the way. It was raining, and I pulled up next to him, and both the mom and the daughter are staring at their phones as they're driving. I was like, no wonder why you merged onto me and almost hit me. It is. I mean, our kids will follow our behavior, whether that's cocaine, alcohol, or phone habits.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot. So let's maybe walk through the trajectory of Clearfork. You are a therapist, you've been practicing for 20 years. At what point did you say, okay, I've got to start my own thing. I've got to do it the way I think it should be done? What was that kind of aha moment for you?
Yeah, that was about in 2015. I was in the adult treatment space, and I just had this clinical experience and this calling to work with youth. And just kind of walked away from a really sweet gig to start all over. I had two kids, 1 and 2 years old, and pregnant. My wife was pregnant with the other one. So
Yeah. It's always the
I
worst
went to my
time
wife.
when you make these jumps. It's always like there's always a reason why you shouldn't do it, but you do it, and of course, it makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good. And so that was kind of it. I mean, it was just, people ask, why do you do this? Well, it's like I can't do anything else. Like, just God or whatever is just got me in this little corner.
Yeah, nice. And when you said, okay, I'm going to go out and work with adolescents, I've got this experience. What was sort of part of the mission? What was part of the values that you wanted to make sure that were kind of baked into to what you were building?
Yeah, so we're a values driven company, and we could spend an hour on this, but just they're literally how I run my family. And so we have 7 of them: honor, unity, sacrifice, transparency, legacy, excellence, and fun. And so we like live and breathe those things. That's how we hire, train, develop, and sometimes separate with people. It's how we manage our milieu. It's how we teach our kids, like, hey, honor says do the right thing. The rules are on the wall. Let's get in line with that. Like, unity says we win by working together. So you're sitting outside a group, let's get into group. So, and we pace those things out. We tie curriculum to them, and so we have like a best practiced therapeutic intervention like narrative therapy or family systems or trauma focus. So we tie those to our value for the week. And then we have an intervention, a skill that it's kind of the third leg of that stool. So I have like narrative therapy, honor week is the value, narrative therapy, and then communication, because we want to learn how to communicate. We'll take just your standard communication principles and teach our kids, set them in chairs and have them, follow the communication model line by line. I think, I feel, I see. And now they have tangible things along with kind of the inward stuff that we're dealing with.
Got it. And what is the participation of parents in treatment? How do they get involved? What is their involvement there?
Yeah, so they'll do at least one weekly formal family session with their therapist per week. And then we'll do like a 3-day family intensive about every 6 weeks. And so that's about a day of like psychoeducation and really letting the family just kind of have those aha moments and take notes and gather the information that they've been wondering. Day 2 and 3 is now about application. There's usually a lot of tears. And day 3 is more kinesthetic. So we get them outside, we'll get them on a ropes course or something like that. Let them and their kid kind of now, after the 2 days, apply in situations to where in the classroom, they may not have anxiety, but when you're 30 feet on a pole and your kid's got the rope, there's some different kinds of interactions that happen. So we kind of flesh those out. So we really, again, from a therapeutic standpoint, I'm a systems guy. And so if the family can't heal, then the kid can't heal. So we've got to get them accelerated through that process as quickly as can. We do a Tuesday family call with all currents folks. We do a Thursday family call with all alumni. So that just is a big rotating group of 1,500 people who just jump in whenever they want. So we just say, once you're at Clearfork, it's kind of like Hotel California. You can never leave. So you just part of us.
Nice. I'm glad you brought up the alumni program. That's something that I think some of our customers have started to emphasize in the last few years, but sounds like that was kind of part of the core idea, was to have, you can't just go through treatment and you're back home and in your day to day, you've got to have that support system on an ongoing basis. Has that been successful for you? How are you leveraging the alumni program to make sure that people are getting the support they need?
Yeah, I mean, kind of going back to the idea of community, right? Like these kids, they've been probably kicked out of school. Their family, air quotes, hates them. And we may be the only person that trusts or they trust, right? And so I got a director of alumni who's got a gazillion phone number people in his phone, and he's just calling. He's calling and texting. We do a quarterly event. So there's a big city park. We're doing barbecue and water houses things. And like, we're just having all of our kids show up. So we'll probably have, between 50 and 100 kids and families just kind of show up. So it's just building community, building resources for hopefully that they call us and say, hey, I'm graduating college, or, hey, those are the wins. And then there's the other end of the spectrum. It's like, hey, my kid's relapsed again, or we need help, or my 10-year-old is now 13 and needs help, because that happens a lot.
Got it. And I know we're going to talk about AI a little bit, but have you seen, or are you using, I know you've got an application that you guys developed, Sophia, for note taking, but are you seeing any activity in AI in sort of the alumni space to kind of keep in touch with clients that discharge? Have you seen anything like that? What are your thoughts on that?
Man, I love it. That's kind of one of the concepts that we've toyed with kind of in the Sophia roadmap of like, how do we gamify engagement? How do we automate follow-ups? This kind of agentic case management concept. And I go back and forth, like, how much is too much AI when somebody really wants Mike Carter to pick up the phone and say, hey buddy, what's going on? So I think we're kind of, it's idealistic at this time. I mean, there's a bunch of apps out there, and Facebook works just as easy as any app, to stay in touch with kids, or Instagram. So we've just relied on the big 2 or 3 platforms to build communities, to keep our kids engaged.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of, our customers are coming to us saying, what are you guys doing about, AI, or about alumni programs, or admissions, or utilization review, like all the things that are kind of repetitive in a way,
Yeah.
for the most part, but that you really can't mess up, right? You can't have, you can have AI mess up a sales call, right? Doesn't matter, they're going to hang up, you lose a sales, fine, but you can't have AI mess up an outreach for alumni, right? So, and the approach we're taking there, and we're going to talk about AI after this too, is you have to have a very strategic way to off ramp the conversation somewhere to a human. And it's complicated because you're it could be an AI agent texting someone, asking how things are going, and it's kind of hard to gauge how they're
Yep.
feeling at that point.
Sentiment's really hard to gauge.
And then there's like texting and also talking, like how much can you employ AI into like conversational engagements with someone. I was talking to somebody at a conference 2 weeks ago, and they're like, if you had somebody call in to be admitted and you had an AI pickup, they could handle the conversation just fine. I said, yeah, but what if that person jumps off a bridge and, what are you going to do there? So there's like a lot of little nuances that it's exciting to know that we have these tools that are 24/7, never tired, can always be available and leverage that scaled. There are these nuances that we have to keep in mind to make sure that we don't overdo it, right? Especially in healthcare. Like you can innovate in a lot of different fields, but when you're dealing with human beings, you have to be a little bit conservative in a way.
Yep, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about Sophia. How did you develop that? You told me about that before the call. What was that? Was that another thing that you're like, nobody's solving for this, I'm just going to fix it?
Yeah, I guess it was rewind way back, like when I was in the adult treatment space, EMRs kind of weren't a thing. And a couple of the big ones came out and their onboarding fees were like 50 grand or something insane. And I was like, come on, I'm a problem solver. And so I just built like EMR Lite for our company. And so we were just using it. I mean, it was very grassroots. And so I left that, took it with me, started Clearfork. We implemented it. It was like, okay, everybody loved it. But I was being the CTO like every single day and not paying payroll or doing. I was like, okay, so let's just go to a platform so I don't have to build an EMR. So hindsight, I may have taken a different road now, but it's So yeah, I've just always been kind of innovative with technology and whatever I do. And so when the LLMs and ChatGPT came out, I was super early adopter and just started toying with notes. And so I have a kid I was mentoring, and he was a consultant, an AI consultant for a huge firm. And I scribed out the idea, and he had an MVP within 5 days. And so I was like, man, I'm going to create a UI UX for this. And we're just going to deploy it, work it in house. And we did that. And then the beginning of this year, I was like, man, I know there's 3 or 4 other standalone products, but let's just see what it does. And so kind of made it public and launched it. And we've had fantastic feedback. And one of the big wins is like we launched our group notes at the beginning of the year. So my development team had been working real hard on that. So that's been a big win because we have 4 facilities now. So we got a boys facility, a girls facility, they're inpatient, and then 2 outpatient. So saves a lot of time and headache for my UR department and my clinical directors. And
Have you been able to quantify how much time that's saving your team?
Yeah, each profile has like a little counter. So when you log in and you log a session, it kind of the math shows you how many you've added. So I mean, you think about it, our folks are saving. They got 8 kids on their caseload. That's 8 hours of sessions, at best 15 minutes a session. So I mean, there's 2 hours a week that's just clicking away, very easy. For now times 15 clinicians. So as the company, that adds up real fast. And I haven't had to fire anybody over, non-performance and notes being delayed.
Yeah. Well, plus, if you're billing insurance, it's producing pristine notes every time. You're not having to chase people for notes. They're not having to take work home. They can see other clients if if they have availability. There's like this is like a good application of AI that's kind of a no-brainer. Like when we launched our AI tool in the beginning, there was a lot of, because it was about a year and a half ago, and there was a lot of apprehension about it replacing me, and what if you've heard it all, right? So, and now when we talk to those same clinicians, they're like, we can't live without it. We don't know. We would never go back to writing notes because it doesn't make sense. I didn't go to school to write notes. I went to school to help people. That's what we heard over and over. So it just kind of,
Right.
A no-brainer. Are there
Absolutely.
we talked a little bit about the alumni and sort of the roadmap of Sophia. Are there any other things you guys are thinking about in terms of innovation, and like, what are some things out there that you're thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I always just tell my team, like, we measure our phone calls and intake. And so we were a boys only facility, and moms kept yelling at me because I didn't have a girls facility, right? So we opened a girls facility, and then we opened the same thing happened with outpatients. So I'm always going to keep building. I think, phone keeps ringing, resources are available. we're just going to be methodical, and we're owner operated, and it's kind of a marathon for me. So we're just going to keep growing.
Yeah, got it. A little bit outside of the AI talk. So if you could have a magic wand and change one thing about how society responds to teen mental health specifically, what would you change?
Magic
Deep
wand.
question.
It's good. It's good. How society responds. Man, I just wish they would respond,
Mm,
because what I see a lot of times is, oh, that's not my problem. That's not my kid. I remember when I was a kid, the dad 3 or 4 doors down, like put me in my place, right? Like, I, and today that's a lawsuit. Uh, and I wish we had more of a community of that way. Is like, I don't think we do. And I think that's kind of a American culture. You go to, but you're from Peru, right? Like, I bet it's different, back home. I bet there's a different community, and there's an eldership, and there's, people in your generations. Like, we don't live in generations. We just have one single family unit with 1.3 kids, and da 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 da. So I wish families would come together. Like, families would come together and help disciple the kids in a unit, versus just letting people go by the wayside and just say, not my problem.
what role does your faith play in how you deliver treatment and care and help to these teens? How does it define and how is it infused, for like a better term, in
Yeah.
your operation?
I think number one, I don't give up on kids, because I just think there's hope. Like it, and I tell our people, man, if it's 1 degree of change, if we have that kid for 45, 90 days, whatever, and we just get 1 degree of change when he's 30, man, that protractor is really wide at the very end of that. So I think it's a lot of optimism, right? Because I see parents can change. I see kids can change. I see just hopeful outcomes. That gets me in trouble sometimes, because I'll take kids with, 3 heads and a lot of baggage and stuff like that. But 9 times out of 10, I think that's the thing that it focuses me the most. And it keeps me coming back. So there's hope on the front end, and there's hope on the back end. So adolescent treatment's not fun. You get beat up and spit on a lot. And so it is my calling, it's my purpose. And so I get back and put my hand to the plow and go again every day. I think without faith and calling, it would just be like, man, I'm gonna go drive a dump truck and whatever. So
Yeah, makes sense. For, I guess, parents, teachers, caregivers, people in the sphere of teens out there today, what are some sort of early red flags of anxiety, depression, just general behavioral disorders that they should be kind of watching for to make sure that they get help to someone early rather than later?
yeah, I'll steal again a page out of AA's, sayings is people, places, and things. When people change, like when relationships change, we see, kids are in a romantic relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, and they break up. And so that's a people thing that changes. And then there's an emotion and a behavioral consequence to all of that sometimes leads to suicide, So people looking at, did they change friends from, playing football or being a cheerleader to not doing those things, like whatever, skating or whatever you do that's associated with substance use. Places, right? Like, are they hanging out in different places? And we see a lot of, I can't get him to come to the dinner table. I can't get him to come to Christmas. I can't get him to do this or that, or they're never home, right? They're always gone. So where are the places that they're hanging out, looking at like systemic changes in where they hang out? And then things, right? Like, if I stop working out and I stop playing the guitar, my wife's going to come to me like, hey, what are you doing with your free time?
Mm.
Where have you been? Right. Because if I'm not doing those two things, I mean, I know that takes up, 10 hours a week, probably between those two activities. That's got to go somewhere. So I'm going to have a different behavioral and mental mindset, and with all of that. So I could easily replace that with drinking, right? Like, it's just an easy thing to waste 10 hours a week.
Paying attention to change and patterns, if you will, right? They're
Yeah.
doing
People,
something, all of
places,
a
and
sudden they're
things.
not. What's going on here? Yeah. For you specifically, what is something that you've learned just because you're working with teens? Something that you've learned from a teen that changed how you work and think?
Hmm.
I think you probably have had a lot of lessons from working with them that, like, I didn't think of that. That makes a lot of sense. So that maybe that kind of reshaped the way you deal with things. Have you had any of those moments?
Yes, lots of them. Because they're smart and they ask good questions. I'm going to generalize it, because we kind of talked about faith a little bit. And so, I mean, when a kid is in the worst position of his life. We've taken his phone, we've taken his car, we've taken his drugs, taken his freedom. A lot of things come up. And when we start talking about faith, it's usually like both middle fingers towards me, right? And a lot of the questions that come at me, man, I got to be sharp. Like I got to be apologetics has got to be on target and ready with those kids. And they'll ask a lot of questions that make me go, okay, is my faith real? Is that real? Is that coming? And so I have to kind of go back and relive it and make sure it's sticky and adhered to. So yeah, I mean, those are great questions. And it's never like a debate. It's more of just like, hey, these are the stories where I've seen God interact in my life.
Mm,
I like you can debate scripture, but when my brother died and this happened and then this happened and then this happened, like those are miracles to me. Like no, there's no explanation. And so, and I got 100 of those stories. So those are
nice.
those.
Daily lessons, sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. And what is a book or a podcast that you recommend for people who want to kind of maybe dive deeper into mental health and kind of some of the things we talked about in terms of the impact of social media, some of the things you're reading now? Could be anything, doesn't have to be about that. Could be any book that you recommended, or any podcast that you recommend.
Dan Sullivan's The Gap and the Gain. So he talks about, we typically entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders will turn around and or look forward and look at the gap between where you are and where that like $100 million goal is. You're like, oh my God, we have $92 million to go. But if you turn around and look at where you came from, those $8 million you just did in 4 days, it's like, and if what happens if you do that 16, 18, 24 days in a row, man, you're way closer. And so it had a lot of psychological application as well as like leadership. And so we do that day in and day out. So that was one of those books I read probably beginning of last year that is just kind of, it's kind of reshaped my framework of how I speak about things to my team, because I can be very like slave driver looking always at the gap and not just what the gain is every single day.
Cool. I appreciate you being here today, Austin. It was great chatting with you. Appreciate you sharing about Clearfork, about Sophia. If people want to learn more about Clearfork, about what you're doing, about you, and all of the things, where can they find you?
Yeah, clearforkacademy.com. Our admissions numbers are on the website. So if anybody needs help, they can call and get free help and assessment on the phone. And then all the social channels, Clearfork Academy.
Awesome. What about Sophia?
SophiaHealth.ai.
Very good. You got an AI domain. That's awesome. That's a good start.
Yeah.
You got to have it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. I appreciate you joining today, Austin. Thanks so much for making time to meet with us. Yeah. Hopefully everybody will get a lot of value out of our conversation today. Thanks again.
Thank you. I appreciate it.